I'm excited to announce our next speaker, Marcio Ghiraldelli, Marcio has about 10 plus years of experience developing software and managing teams, and he's currently on the quality engineering team at Atlassian. So please welcome Marcio to the stage.
Hello, good day. Thanks for attending to my Agile Metrics presentation. I hope everyone is having a great time here in Barcelona, as much as I am. The beer here is so good and so inexpensive. I love that. Okay, so before we start, I would like to show a metaphor about software development. So imagine for a moment that these are your developer teams, and hypothetically, their goal is not to write software. Hypothetically, their goal is to fill balloons. So they have to fill party balloons. So we have one team down there, they just filled up 4 balloons, another team here filled up 1 balloon, the team back there filled another balloon. And look, this team on the next iteration, that team that has only 1 developer filled 80 balloons, and this team 2 balloons. What that team is doing that is so good? Why they're filling up balloons so fast? Maybe they have a new technique, a new machine to fill balloons. They created something. And what about this team? There are so many developers, but I don't see so many balloons, so perhaps they're missing some source material. I need to investigate that. So the moral here is the traditional problem with software development is that you can't easily visualize job being done. Software is not something that you can visualize easily. And that's why metrics are so important. So today I'm going to share with you a story I had with migration from 3 big back-end teams I used to work on my previous job. It was a very conservative company. We have more than 6,000 employees on our R&D department. And about 2002, we made a big migration from waterfall process to Scrum, Agile, and that has been working for the last 10 years. We've been working from Scrum. And I started to ask myself if there's something better we could do to work to change the way we do. And I ended up doing a migration for Kanban. But the focus of this presentation is not a discussion between Scrum or Kanban. The focus of this presentation is the metrics I started to use and how they can help you using JIRA Software to improve the way your teams are working, either in Scrum or Kanban model. So before talking about the migration itself, I want to do a quick explanation about some concepts of Scrum and Kanban to make sure everybody's on the same page. So Scrum is made of a clear set of rituals. We have plannings, retrospective meetings, estimation. Cycles are clearly defined in time boxes, usually 2 weeks. Issues are estimated with story points. Usually the team sits and do the poker planning thing. We have point estimation for every issue. And we use a chart called sprint burn down to see how well the sprint is going, which is a chart that basically shows how many issues are done compared to the prediction of issues being done. On the other hand, we have Kanban. Kanban is more focused on incremental and quick releases. It has this concept of limiting the amount of concurrent work a team is working on. There's the concept of pooling work, so the team pulls the work instead of someone pushing work for them to do. And it's focused on throughput. In other words, how fast the team are delivering issues. So these are some basic differences between Scrum and Kanban. Having that in mind, we could say that some teams' attributes make Scrum better, or other attributes make Kanban better. So it depends on your team. So Scrum, this is just some example, usually works better for teams which work delivering product-facing features, which requires more alignment with product managers, marketing, so you need more control about the timing, new features, and when your team is new, you just assemble the team, the people don't know very well each other. Sometimes the Scrum works better because you have more control. On the other hand, Kanban is maybe works better with teams that works with back-end changes or bug fixes, which are things that are not completely related with product management. Oops, sorry. When you are implementing, whoops, Scrum, come on. When you are implementing infrastructure changes like improving performance of your product, changing the deployment model, things that are not easily perceived by the end user, sometimes these attributes work better with Kanban teams. So as I said, I was working with Scrum in my teams, but the 3 teams I was working were dealing with heavy back-end changes on cloud products with high availability. And then some signals started to show up, and I started thinking about if Kanban would work better. So some examples, deployment speed. So currently we are facing, I think this movement started from several years ago, deployment starts to get faster. Our deployment pipeline started to get faster, and then usually we started to deploy changes in the middle of the sprint. That's not a problem at all, but what was happening is that we started to have disturbances inside the sprint that are changing our sprint burn down chart because we're fixing or changing things inside the deployment. And we have the impression that this was wrong because we were increasing our burn down chart, fixing things that we're supposed to do in a DevOps culture. So it was a bit awkward. Blue-green deployments is another example. Sometimes you have a deployment infrastructure where you can change things, test things in production after you deploy, but not necessarily making it customer visible. So there was a lot of work happening after the releases which were not being matched correctly with the sprint planning. Another signals, it's related to story points. So we were spending a lot of time with story points, but we had a very difficult times trying to match story points with business value, especially because we were back-end teams, we were improving performance, we were doing database migration, back-end search migrations, and it was hard to translate these points to business value. So at the end of the sprint, for instance, we said we delivered 40 story points, but what's the point with that? So story points started to feel a little strange. And most importantly, bottlenecks. So who here doesn't have problems with their team with bottlenecks, with depending with external dependencies and at all? We started to notice that bottlenecks was becoming a huge issue for us. So as an example, testers were idle at the beginning of the sprint because there's nothing to be tested. And then at the end of the sprint, there's a lot of things to be tested, and then it was a bottleneck. So some other traditional problem with software development. Another external dependencies, as I said, the teams I was working on were back-end teams, so we didn't have designers in our team. But sometimes we changed things which relied on UX and designers, and given their external teams, that caused a bottleneck for us sometimes. So deployment changes, story points values, bottlenecks, all of those things were signals for me that is it something that I can change about Scrum and Kanban and make it work better? So, as I said, it depends on your team and your leadership style. So, regardless of the framework, it depends on what your team is doing, that, not on the attributes, but what they are doing and your leadership style. So, there's no silver bullets. Sorry if you guys are expecting, no, Kanban is better, Scrum is better. I won't say that because both are good. Okay, so now let's shift a little bit about metrics. So, as I said, in Sprint, we rely heavily on the burn down charts to check how the team is performing inside a sprint. So, estimation, story points. One of my teams was working rewriting the whole search infrastructure from Lucene to Solar, which is 2 different techniques. There's so many uncertainty on this work that we decided if we try to estimate with points the whole job that we need to do, we're probably going to be wrong. So we decided instead create a very fluent mechanism to deploy issues very quickly. So we configure our infrastructure to be able to release during day, blue-green deployments, testing production, be very fluency, and deliver small changes as the time it goes, so we get more confident with the legacy code. So instead of story points, we focus on fluency, delivering fast and making sure we're not blocked by external dependencies. Story points. Given that we are focused on being fluent, we decide instead of spending time giving points to the stories, let's try to create stories of the same size and the smaller the possible. So all the architecture changes and all the planning meetings, our goal is to create the smaller possible fragments of issues in order to deliver quickly and without being blocked. So homogeneous issues, so have fluency. And having these ideas in mind, we used the Kanban metrics to measure how good we were with that. And enter here JIRA Software plus JQL and plus REST API, which are the core features we used to extract all these metrics and focus on those goals. So this is a little bit of Kanban, but I want to focus on the metrics because a lot of things that I'm going to show here is very useful for both frameworks. So the first metric I'm going to talk about is throughput. I think this is the most popular metric from Kanban. So throughput is the number of issues your team is delivering per time. So we were focusing on increase this number. So the 3 teams I migrated in all the meetings with my Agile masters, the discussion was how we can improve the throughput. So an easy way to extract these metrics with JIRA, so this is an example if you're using JIRA Software, you can go to JQL and make a search with a time interval. So just give me all the issues that start from, say, 14 days ago, and the resolution date is today, so all the issues that were solved. And you get the total number. You can see that in the UI. And dividing this number by the number of days, you get the throughput. So if you're working with a granularity of 14 days, you can do this JQL, and this is your number. So this is the first metric, throughput, number of issues per time. And you can automate that if you get one developer of your team and ask him to automate that. This very same JQL can be extracted via the REST API. So if you write the same JQL with the date interval, you get a JSON. You just get the total number, divide that, and insert in somewhere in your system. So you can easily automate this data extraction. So this is throughput, the first metric I'm going to discuss today. And again, divide by the number of days. So the next metric, 2 metrics, but they're very similar, is cycle time and lead time. So basically, cycle time and lead time are time intervals. Lead time is the time difference between the issue creation, the first time the issue is created and entered in your backlog, and the time it gets done, so it's the full lead time, the full time interval. Whereas the cycle time is the time difference between the first time the team starts working in the issue until the issue gets done. This is important to measure the quality of your backlog. I'm going to show some examples in a later slide. So a bit more complicated, but an easy example on how to extract this data. So if you go to the JIRA issue page, you have on your right column all the date fields, and we have one very important date, which is the creation date. So you have the date the issue was created. And if you scroll down to the transitions, this is the new layout. I don't know if everybody saw in the keynote, we have a new layout for JIRA. It will be rolled out very soon, but you'll have that similar information in the actual design. You have the status transitions. So if you look at that, we can see when how long ago the issue was first touched for the team, when it was transitioning from to-do to in progress, which is the workflow, the default workflow for this team, and how long ago the issue was transitioned to done. So with these 3 date points, the date, the creation date, the first time the team touched the issue, and the date it was resolved, you have the 3 dates, and you can easily calculate the lead time and the cycle time for this particular issue. So this is a bit complicated. Again, you can easily automate that with the REST API. So for every issue, you can open the issue in the REST API, and you can expand the changelog. So this command will give you a object, a JSON object, which will show you all the transitions from this issue. So again, you have the created field, let's call it T1, and then you have the changelog items. So the second block is the first time the status, a status change happened from to do to your next change, to the next status, let's call it T2. And then you have when the issue reached the done status, which is T3. So having those variables, it's very easy to calculate cycle time and lead time. So again, if you automate this, you can cycle through all the issues you're interested in your date, and then gather all this data in your favorite database, and you would have all these metrics centralized somewhere. And lastly, the work in progress. So as I said, Kanban has the concept of limiting the amount of work the team is working concurrently. So work in progress basically is the number of issues the team is working concurrently at the same time. Given we're focused on fluency, on having issues being delivered fast and without interruptions, the more focused the team is, the better for the metrics we're chasing. So the goal here is to limit the WIP. Every time I want my teams working in the less amount number of issues concurrently and delivering as fast as possible, because this gives more values to my customers. So let's go back to JIRA. If you make a search and ask for all the issues that are not in the to-do or done status, that means the results will be all the issues that the team is working on, and give me all the issues that were created in the last 14 days, you're going to get the, from the granularity of 14 days, all the issues. You get the total is 23 in this example. So you can see that in the UI. So this is the WIP for the last 14 days. Of course, you can adjust the granularity to have more granularity. And again, lastly, you can do that with JQL, with REST API. So you can execute the same JQL with the same status and the created date, and input that value that will come in the response.total in your favorite database. So this is to wrap up how you can easily extract all the metrics related to Kanban, to Fluency from JIRA. And what this will give to you, it will give you a bird's eye view across different teams. So in my experience, I migrated 3 teams, and given that we decided, all the 3 teams decided to chase the same metrics, having all those metrics in the same place allowed me to easily compare and easily identify what was working with each different team and focus in the what needs to be improved. So I'm going to show some examples here. So let's say that we automated everything. We created some awesome Connect add-ons and inserted everything in a central database. And this is an example of what you would get of your team. So this is my 3 teams: the pipeline improvements, database migration, and advanced search, which was making the search migration, and all the 3 metrics. So the work in progress, lead time, cycle time, and throughput. So what we can see here. Let's go one by one. So this is the pipeline improvements team. So we can see here that, fact, we have a high variation of lead time and cycle time. So some days the lead time is 20, then it goes to 10, then it spikes to 30. So there's a high variance on the lead time and cycle time. What are the actions proposed here? What the consequence? So if the throughput is unstable, it's making the throughput unstable because the cycle time and lead time directly translates to the throughput, the speed that the team is developing. I have poor delivery estimates. So I can't really trust on the estimation the team is doing because the variation is too high. So if I'm focused on fluency, this is a signal. And what action I can take here in this scenario? Increase backlog refinement. So look into this chart, I can talk to the Agile Master and try to create some actions. We need to increase the time we're spending refining the backlog. So either we need to do more testing, break down the issues a bit better, create some test issues before we actually make the improvement. So this is one action we can see with these metrics. So going to the next one, this is the other complex team. We're making a migration from MySQL to Oracle. It was very complex because, as I said, legacy code everywhere. So what we can see here, we have a high work in progress, a high number of issues on the board in progress at the same time. So it goes to 30, then drops to 10, then against 30, so the average here is 25. That's too high comparing to the other teams because they have the same number of developers. So the consequence, low throughput. So if I have a lot of issues being worked concurrently, developers are doing a lot of things at the same time, the consequence is the throughput will be low. And we decided that our goal is to increase throughput. So one action that we need to do here is limit the work in progress. That's very easy to do with JIRA Software. Just go to your columns, adjust your columns to reflect the real work your team is doing, and add some limits there. Another example, what effect we have here with the team that was doing the search migration. We have a very low difference between lead time and cycle time. So lead time is the complete time from backlog to done, and cycle time is the time between first time developer touched the issue and until it gets done. So what this fact shows me, eventually we're having a backlog starvation. Because what's happening here, as the issues are being created in the backlog and almost instantly being consumed. So that means the team don't have a backlog. That's not necessarily bad, but maybe one action I could do here to improve this team is increase the backlog. Maybe I need to call the Agile Master and developer, hey, we need to create a bigger plan of what we need to do because we don't have a very large backlog. Again, this is things we are seeing from the metrics. So we are here looking to all our teams and seeing some interesting things. So Fluent metrics triggers bottleneck discussions. So it's all about what is holding up the teams in order to do a very good job. Okay, so next topic is revamping meetings. When I had this first idea of migrating from Scrum to Kanban, one thing that really scared me is what I'm going to do with the meetings. Because the Scrum workflow is largely based on rituals. You have meeting plans, backlog groomings, retrospectives at the end of the sprints. And whereas in Kanban, you don't have rituals. You just create backlog and the team start consuming that. You don't have this concept of meetings in the framework. So that was something that, how I'm going to control my teams if I don't have meetings. So we come up with this interesting idea of creating a backlog of meeting subjects and book a weekly meeting. So how does it work? Every Monday or Tuesday at this time, we have scheduled a weekly meeting for the team. And we're going to consume the topics that are in this backlog. So we switched the agenda of our meetings to a Kanban board. And that worked very well because nobody complained anymore about useless meeting. Well, we don't have anything to discuss now. We have these things to discuss, and we don't have to every time stop to make these meetings. Now I'm going to talk about the cumulative flow diagram. It's a very interesting report we have in JIRA Software and how we use them to drive our meetings. So it's a team-level discussion driven by the cumulative flow diagram. So I decided in order to show this slide, I just got a very large cumulative flow diagram, and I'm going to break it in pieces and explain what we're seeing here. So the x-axis is time, and the y-axis is number of issues, and the colors are the status in your board. So this board is showing the distribution of issues that are in particular status through time. So what are the interesting things we can see here? So the blue color, I just changed the color to make it more visual, it's writing code, developing. The orange one is waiting, the red one is waiting for a test, and the yellow one is actually being tested. So if we go back here to this mid-March, we can see that, wait, we have a problem here with testing. Most of the issues are waiting on the column, waiting for testing. So I think we need more software testers here. That was the obvious decision we made when we are having a meeting with the team level discussion, look into this chart in this period. So we decided to put one more software testing in the team. Let's fast forward to 2 or 3 months ahead. So we can see here that after we added a new software tester, we started to have more issues being actually tested and less time being spent on waiting for a tester. So that more or less helped. But what's the interesting thing? The number of issues the team was delivering didn't increase. So it looks like we just shifted one problem to another part. Looks like, looking to this chart, I have the impression that we just shifted the problem from one side to other side. I think by having one more tester, he just spent more time testing, and that didn't improve it at all. So again, what we can do to improve here? Let's start testing before. Let's make developers be more aware of testing. So this is the quality changes we have in Agile, making developers be more responsible for testing. And we decided to introduce the pull request review. So that's the one feature we have in Bitbucket, which allows developers to check the code before it gets merged. So we shift a little bit of the quality responsibility from the tester to the developer itself. And then we created a new status, which is the green one, issue in pull request. So fast forward into the end of the year, we can see that we decreased the waiting to be tested and tested, but we created a new column, which is the pull request review. And we actually increased the number of issues a little bit, so that was a good move. And now, a next discussion that this chart will drive us, how can we improve the pull request reviews? Because it looks like we're spending a lot of time there. So this is just one example on how you can use cumulative flow diagram from JIRA Software to drive discussions on your team. Again, it's about visualization. And we use that to drive our meetings. So now I'm going to talk about the CCD, the control chart diagram. This is another, maybe the most interesting report we have in JIRA Software, the control chart diagram. So this is, instead of a team-level discussion, this chart gives you the ability to have an issue-level discussion. So again, I brought you an example of my database migration team. I don't know how many of you saw this report before, so I'm going to quickly explain. The x-axis is the time, and the y-axis is number of days, and the green dots are individual issues. Sometimes they're clustered. You can see that we have full-colored dots. This is a cluster of issues because the chart grouped them. But this gives you, you can easily see which are the issues that are the outliners of your fluency. So for instance, this is one example. This issue here, the JPAR 445, it's an issue that the cycle time, the amount of time it was in the team board being developed, is 8 weeks. So this is clearly an outliner. This is an issue that really hurt the metrics of our team. So we focus our discussion on what happened with that issue. And this is an issue where we're inserting data on a third-party data warehouse we had, which is called Socrates. And the discussion made us understand that we don't have an expert in our team in that tool. And given that our backlog had a lot of issues that are related to insert data on that external data warehouse, we took an action of train one particular developer to learn how to use and become the expert. So this, again, is an issue-level discussion on how to improve the fluency of your team using the control chart diagram from JIRA Software. So revamping meetings. Meetings driven by data will speed up decisions. So instead of gathering everybody in the room, just asking what went well, what we need to improve, we can use data to drive the meetings. That make the actions and the discussions much more focused. And you can easily delegate that to your agile masters because they're going to follow the trend. So this is an interesting framework to drive your meetings using JIRA Software. So, takeaways of this presentation. As I said at the beginning, Scrum or Kanban, there is no silver bullet. There is no better framework. Every time someone comes to you and, no, you have to migrate to Kanban because it's better, it's the trend. No, it depends on your team, what your team is doing, how your team is assembled, and your leadership style. That's very important. If your leadership style is more focused on control, or if you delegate a bit more, so there's a lot of difference. So there is no better framework. This is a very important takeaway from this presentation. Metrics, it's very important to visualize what the team is doing. So if you're that happened with me when I was managing one team, and then I started to manage 3 teams. And when you made this shift of managing more than one team, it starts to become more complicated because you don't have a day-to-day conversation with every developers and everybody to understand what is working. So you need to rely on metrics that are very well agreed with your agile masters in order to have this centralized visualization and have your dashboard and understand what is going on. So metrics are very important to visualize the work your teams are doing, especially when you're managing more than one team. And meetings are a complicated topic, especially when you're working in Kanban. So you need to come up with a framework for drive meetings. So this is just a proposal, something that worked very well, because I never heard my teams complaining about useless meeting anymore because we were working with backlog that they created or I created because this is something that we need to meet. And I didn't have to chase rooms every time in a company we need to make a meeting, there's no free room. So we just created a fluent flow to control our meeting. So if you are using JIRA Software with your teams, start gathering Fluent metrics right now and improve the way your team is working. If you're not using JIRA Software, just pop up at the JIRA Software booth. I'll be there, and I can quickly create an instance for you in cloud in seconds, minutes, seconds. I think we're very good for that. And that's it. So thank you, and start filling your balloons. Thanks.